Get ready, Duke and Clemson fans, for a preview of this weekend's matchup right here on Locked On College Crossover.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, college football fans, Clemson fans, Duke fans? Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm your host or co-host for this crossover show, Morgan Thomas, part of Locked On Clemson and the Locked On Podcast Network. And joining me also for this Friday edition show to preview the Saturday game is JJ Jackson from Locked On Duke. And we're going to be talking about this big matchup between the Duke Blue Devils and the Clemson Tigers on the football field in Death Valley, and not the basketball court just yet, but I'm sure JJ is getting ready for that as the basketball season is getting close to being underway. But before we get into it, I wanted to let everyone know that we want to thank you for being a part of the show. You know how we do it here on Locked On, exclusive content for you Monday through Friday. So thank you so much. Big salute out there to the everydayers. And if you're new to the show, hey, what are you waiting for? Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that follow button, hit all the buttons. And so you never miss another episode. And if you just happen to maybe be a Clemson fan that likes Duke, go head on over to the Locked On Duke channel and like them as well. But I won't hold it against you. All right. And vice versa for those Duke fans. But before we get into anything, this episode is brought to you by Mazda. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later. We'll give you highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. Mazda, move and be moved. All right, JJ, welcome in. I know we've been together on the ACC squad shows, but this is really the first time we've done a crossover show.
Yeah.
I've done Syracuse and I've done North Carolina State, and North Carolina, excuse me, and because we don't play North Carolina State anymore. But now I get to do Duke. Although I got to say, so far everybody that I've done a crossover with, their team has beaten Clemson. And it really hasn't been that fun for me, other than the Tar Heels. So, at least I could say maybe North Carolina crossovers, Clemson can win. But I am pretty intimidated to play Duke this weekend. It seems as if Duke has a powerful offense that knows what they want to do. And Clemson still is more of what I like to say, the spaghetti on the wall offense. Is that true? Should I be scared of this Duke offense? What are the biggest strengths for Duke?
Without a doubt. I mean, this offense has been so much fun to watch, Morgan, throughout the course of the entire season. And it's something, quite frankly, that many Duke fans aren't necessarily used to, is playing this brand of football and being able to score as many points as they are. Duke invested a lot of money in the transfer portal this offseason to bring in Darian Mensah, the quarterback over from Tulane. He's reported to be one of the highest paid players in the entire country. And yes, Duke invested in that, not for a basketball player, but for a quarterback. And it has absolutely paid off. Darian Mensah right now leads the entire country, all of FBS, in passing yards per game at over 300 of them. He's got 6 or 7 different receivers that already themselves individually have over 100 receiving yards. He's spreading the wealth to everybody. The rushing attack was slow out of the gates, but it's getting better week by week. So simply put, Morgan, this offense is really fun to watch if you're a Duke fan. However, as we've seen throughout the course of the year, it's given headaches to many of the other defenses.
Well, I'm getting ready to take my Advil, my ibuprofen, my Tylenol, whatever it may be, because if any defense is going to make your offense look even better than they already are, it's going to be the Clemson defense. Tom Allen was brought in to try to improve this team, and it seems as if what he wants to do and the personnel that's out there is just not working well together. They can't get any sort of pressure up front. And so that's been a big challenge for them. To me, the biggest worry for me is it kind of goes back to Darian Mensah. And you look back to like Steve Angeli and even Haynes King and Garrett Nussmeier. if you let Mensah do what he wants to do and have time to decide what he can do, then he's going to absolutely destroy you. And Clemson, I said they need to make Halloween 2.0, the day after Halloween, be as scary as the day of Halloween. The Clemson defensive line has to figure out a way to do that. I don't want to say I don't have faith in it, but we haven't seen it yet. So if Darian Mensah has time to throw it, who's like your deep ball threat? Who's your third down chain mover guy? Like, who are guys that we need to circle on our program when we get into the stadium?
Yeah, Cooper Barkate starts at the top of that scouting report for Duke, and that wasn't necessarily the guy we were expecting going into the year being the number one guy. Andrew Anthony was the flashier name coming to join this Duke squad out of the transfer portal from Oklahoma, and formerly before that, he played for the Michigan Wolverines. So a big-time wideout addition that Duke got. But their late portal ad, Morgan, is a Harvard graduate in Cooper Barkate. So he's set up for life when football's all said and done, when he's pairing the Harvard and the Duke degree on his wall once it comes to be done. But yeah, man, he's had several over 100-yard receiving games. He leads this team in yards and receptions. He's a deep ball threat. He's a slants guy across the middle. Really, his route tree can handle anything that you want to. And then I'll throw in the other returning receivers that Duke's got as well. And Quayshawn Brown, his nickname is Queso. As you start to see the spelling of his name, it makes more sense when you're spelling out Queso and watching him run as fast as he is. He's a dynamic playmaker for the Duke football team. And Samir Hagans has done a great job as well. He's returned a couple of punts for touchdowns and a big threat over the middle for Darian Mensah. That's what's been so impressive to me, Morgan, is that truly it hasn't just been one guy. The guy is Cooper Barkate, but these other wide receivers that I've outlined are all incredibly impressive, and they're getting opportunities because Duke throws the football so much, because Darian Mensah is such an efficient passer.
Is Darian Mensah going to be a guy that we need to worry about running the ball, or is there a run game that is kind of revolved around another player?
That's so fair to ask and so fair to wonder. Not really is the answer in terms of Mensah's legs. He has mobility. He just doesn't use it too frequently. What I really appreciate about Darian Mensah is that when he gets out of the pocket, you always want to be able to have your quarterback continue to keep their eyes down the field and scanning, evaluating, but then at the right opportunities, take off and run. Mensah, very great at the first part. I mean, there are so many plays where the defense probably feels good because this guy's running for his life out of the pocket. But what they don't realize is Mensah has now located somebody 25 yards down the field, across his body, and he's able to find them. However, when the defense does get there, he holds on to the football a little bit too long because he's trying to make that home run pass, and it can turn into some sacks. And early on in the season, it turned into some turnovers, particularly in like Duke's non-conference loss that they had against Illinois. So in that regard, he's mobile in terms of getting out of the pocket, but running himself, that's not going to be as big of a dynamic.
We know that Duke's offense is extremely efficient, and especially in the early downs. That's what worries me so much is if you let this team come in to Death Valley, which now they haven't had a Power 4 win in over a year at Clemson, which is
crazy to think about.
Upsetting for sure.
Yeah.
But Duke wants to be on schedule first and second down. They want to continue to move the chains. They're going to do that first with the passing attack, but they have, like you mentioned, a good running attack as well. So I would say they're a pretty balanced team. It really does kind of set up for another one of those games where if Clemson's defense can't, somehow find a way to get them off of schedule, they'll be right back in playing from behind. And what we've seen so far in all these losses is you let the opposing team get up by 10, and before you know it, it's the end of the game, and you never really were able to catch up. You got close, and you could say maybe you were one or two plays away, but you never really had a chance, just because of the way that the possessions went. So I get really worried about the strengths of Duke's offense and what all those weapons can bring to the table. When we come back, we'll take a break real quick. We'll continue with College Crossover on segment 2, giving you a little bit of insight on some of the strengths from the Clemson side for you Duke fans out there. This episode is brought to you by Mazda's Moving the Game Forward for those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There are moments that do more than put points on the board. They move crowds, move culture, and keep moving the game forward. This week, or at least before the bye weeks, moving the game forward section or play was from TJ Moore. He was able to make a great fingertip catch. He came out and said in the post game that he really didn't think he was going to be able to catch it. He just at least put his hands out there, and man, what a beautiful touchdown pass it was. It was great to see one of Clemson's top receivers move the game forward, keep Clemson in it, keep fighting. They need more of that if they're going to go on a tear here in November. So when you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to every Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. All right, we're coming back in here. Segment 2. I'm going to give you a little bit of thoughts for me from the Clemson standpoint. And I hate to tell you this, but
Yeah,
I don't really know of a lot of strengths right now, and a lot of Clemson fans will probably feel the same way, that it kind of frustrates me. So you hit me with a question. I'll try to be as positive as I can, because a lot of Clemson fans say, Morg, you've been very negative the last 3 weeks, maybe the last 3 months, but just hit me with a question.
yeah.
And hopefully I'll tell you something that's good for Clemson.
Let's just start here, Morgan, because obviously in the ACC, we've had many run-ins with Clemson over the years, both in football and in basketball. And Duke and Clemson, I love when these two teams get together. But for a lot of the Locked On Blue Devils everydayers, they're looking at the standings throughout the course of the season and now seeing, wait a minute, Clemson football under 500? Is this real life? Is this really happening? Duke is the team greater than 500 going into a matchup like this, and Clemson's under it. How in the world do we get here, Morgan? This just feels like an alternate reality.
Well, take a seat and let's go back 4 years, because that's how we got to where we're at. Dabo Swinney, really, when you look back at it, if you're a roster management nerd out there, you follow our lads' depth charts, or you make your own depth charts in your spreadsheets, and you follow the recruiting trail from 24/7 Sports or Rivals or On3 or whatever you do. When you look back, a lot of the guys that are starting in a lot of those areas that are a concern, like in the safety position, in the linebacker position, in the offensive line, a lot of the guys that are now starters for Clemson were really, if you really want to go back and be honest with yourself, maybe the third or fourth recruiting choice for Clemson. They didn't land their top guy. They didn't land their Christian Wilkins or their Dexter Lawrence or their Brian Bresee. They didn't land those guys, so they went to the next level of guys. Well, then they didn't land those guys, so they went to the next group of guys. They didn't land those guys, so they went to the fourth group of guys. They landed a couple of guys. Now, they're not bad football players, but just competitively, they were never one of the better players in the country out of high school. And so what happened is Dabo's refusal to make up for that through the transfer portal kind of hurt them in being able to catch up with other teams, or at least stay relevant with other teams. What's happened is other teams have gone to the portal and said, hey, you know what? We kind of stunk at offensive line recruiting in 2022. Well, we don't have to stink in 2023. Let's just get some portal guys that maybe were guys we missed. If you look back, there are a lot of teams who missed on guys that were, in the 50 range as far as their position ranking recruiting, but got them as a portal guy later on. And so not only was that good in getting a more talented player, evaluated wise, ranking wise, but also somebody that's more mature. Dabo kind of fell into this rut of only using the high school recruiting, market. And so when you do that, you got a lot of freshmen. They're so young. Their weight is not where it needs to be. Their muscle mass is not where it needs to be. And they can't just plug in immediately and be serviceable. And so what's happened is Clemson's starters just haven't been up to the same standard as what we've been used to. And it really goes back to 3 years ago when they didn't really replace some misses in the recruiting trail.
Well, now we're in this position where you've got Clemson with this 3-4 record, and you can see early on in the year, despite a lot of hype going into the season for Clemson, a very frustrating season for the Tigers. Offensively, quarterback is where we start out on the field for any team that you begin to evaluate. We talked a good bit about Darian Mensah and what he's been able to bring to the table for Duke. Cade Klubnik is somebody, Morgan, who going into the year, everybody in America wanted to talk about. He's there at the top of the Heisman conversation and on NFL draft boards towards the top when you start to evaluate the quarterback position. And now we go into a game on Saturday where Cade Klubnik was not the most recent quarterback to play for the Clemson Tigers because of injury concerns. So start there for the Duke fans. What's the 4-1-1? How's Cade Klubnik? What's the likelihood he takes the field on Saturday and that offensive dynamic if he's able to go versus if he's not?
Well, he practiced this week, so all signs are pointing to that he will return. He did have a bye week, so that gave him another week to kind of rest. It was a high ankle sprain, as you are familiar with. If anybody is like myself who had CeeDee Lamb on their fantasy football team, high ankle sprain can last for an entire month or longer. You just never really know with these type of things. And so thankfully, he actually tried to come out and work on it. And that really just frustrated Clemson fans more than help the situation, because a few years ago, Deshaun Watson beat South Carolina with a torn ACL, and he wrapped up his leg like a mummy and braced it up and still played and even juked guys out and got a rushing touchdown. When you see Cade Klubnik have a high ankle sprain and kind of limp around in the Tiger Walk and then kind of limp around on the field and then ultimately come out in a dad hat and some short shorts and a hoodie, it kind of left a bitter taste in fans' mouth. Like, hey, we've seen other quarterbacks fight through worse injuries and you're not doing it. And that was a little bit of a frustration. Christopher Vizina came in and did really was serviceable. The biggest problem against SMU is that they weren't able to establish a run. They tried to start out establishing the run. It was an utter failure. When they turned around and started throwing the ball, SMU's pass defense is horrible. So they were able to get things going. But by that point, they were playing from behind. They never could catch up. They never got a defensive stop. So the defense wasn't there to help them out when they needed to once they started scoring. But Cade is definitely a better spiral thrower. He throws harder, I believe, and he is more mobile, in my opinion. And he can make big plays, but you just never know when you're going to get them. And so it's just so inconsistent. He kind of reverted a little bit back at the beginning of the season, all because really the offensive line. That's the biggest thing. Is Cade was already a finicky pocket quarterback anyways. But when you have an offensive line that has regressed as bad as they have, it made it even worse for him. He went back to, I wouldn't even say junior Cade. He is definitely more of a sophomore or a freshman Cade because he just wants to run 15 yards backwards to get out of the pressure. And that just makes it worse.
Yeah, you can kind of create more problems there. It's going to be fun. I mean, it's Duke and Clemson Saturday at noon on the ACC Network. I've got one more for you before we take our last time out here on the show. We've talked about the Duke offense and how dynamic of a passer Darian Mensah has. You hear leading the country in passing yards per game. You then start to think about that Clemson secondary. What is the overview there? How would you describe this unit?
Well, they lack a little bit of speed. They're kind of those guys that are not bad players, but they missed after RJ Mickens left for the NFL. There's just not a lot of guys there that have been able to step up. But they also didn't get, their big time recruits that they wanted. They went after a bunch of guys and just never really landed any of them. So they're having to deal with some guys who are maybe lower on the recruiting rankings that are now starting. That are just not able to keep up. And it goes back to just not being able to, not using the transfer portal. And I think Dabo is he's going to have to adjust going forward and actually do that and acknowledge, hey, when areas are down, he needs to supplement through the portal. For me, the biggest strength on Clemson's defense has been Sammy Brown and Avion Terrell. So if I could say anything about Duke or if we need players to step up and to kind of be leaders on the team, it's going to be Avion Terrell from the cornerback position and Sammy Brown. And Ronan Hannafin at the safety position hasn't been bad. When he can get turnovers, he's great. But if you leave him too much time to get exposed in coverage, that's when it gets really bad.
We'll see how it all plays out. I mean, it's going to be a big offensive showdown, I think, for Duke going up against this Clemson defense, and excited to see everything come together for a game like this. Here's something to know. Duke and Clemson have played on an entire different continent since the last time the Duke Blue Devils won in Death Valley. How about that for a tease? We'll tell you a little bit more about that when this Locked On College crossover continues here in a moment. All right, today's episode of Locked On Clemson and Locked On Blue Devils is brought to you by our friends over at DoorDash. That's right, it's almost the weekend. Time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order, these players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it all down. For Duke and Clemson this season, we've been talking about quarterbacks. Why not talk about them delivering in such a big way? All throughout the year, Darian Mensah has been the guy that Duke has relied on in Clemson, certainly looking inward at their locker room. Senior leader Cade Klubnick at the quarterback position. When the pressure is on, these guys do their best to come through. No hesitation, no delay. And if you've been watching week after week, this performance wasn't just a fluke. They're on a streak. And just like these guys have delivered for Clemson and Duke, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays. With DoorDash Streaks, you save every Saturday you order. Stack it up all season, and you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through November 18th. Our show today is also brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. FanDuel is America's #1 sports book. Hey, the NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay for a shot at a much bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com right now and sign up. We look at Duke and Clemson this weekend. FanDuel has the Clemson Tigers favored by 3.5. FanDuel.com is the place to be. FanDuel is a proud sponsor of the Locked On Podcast Network.
All right, we're back in here for the final segment. If you're an everydayer, again, thank you so much for hanging with us through 3 segments. If you're new to the show and you're here in the 3rd segment, well, thank you for sticking with us. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. We're going to finish it up talking about our Duke versus Clemson preview, specifically moving towards the major storylines across the board for both teams. I know that this one is a big one for Clemson because the Clemson Tiger fan base, it's another home game. You know, they have 5 games left in the season, all right? And they have no more bye weeks, so it's all of November, basically. You got 5 Saturdays in November because Saturday, November 1st, is this weekend. So they have 5 games. They need to win 3 of those 5 to be able to get to a bowl, which is crazy to be even debating right now.
What a world we're living in, that Clemson's talking about getting to a bowl.
One of those games is going to be Furman. So you've got to say that that's probably a win.
Yep.
So now you need 2. Well, you've got 2 home games and 2 away games. Your 2 home games starting this weekend versus Duke, and then next weekend versus Florida State. So you have 2 back-to-back home games, and then your 2 away games are Friday night against Louisville. You don't want to have to bank on that one. And a rivalry matchup at the end of the season at Williams-Brice Stadium in Columbia, South Carolina. Again, Clemson has had great success as a road winner, but you don't want to bank on a rivalry game to be the one that gets you. And you don't want your rival to be, it's already bad enough that if they beat you, they can brag for 365 days. But if they keep you from going to a bowl game, that makes it
adds to
even
it.
worse. So it could be a battle between two teams that not going to the bowl game anyways, but it could be a scenario where one could keep one out, and that would be even worse. But the biggest thing is, can Clemson actually win one of these home games? And JJ, I'm sorry, Duke is one of those home games. So we've got to hope that they can figure out something. For me, the biggest storyline for me is Cade Klubnik truly back to normal? Is he, I mean, as far as health wise, if he's going to play, and I said this earlier this week on my show, but if he's going to play, I don't want a lukewarm decision. I don't want an on the fence decision. I want, if you're going to say you're going to suit up, then Cade needs to go out there and empty the tank and be the best possible option he can be out there. He can't, take one hit and start limping around again. Even if it did hurt, if he's going to play, then he needs to give it his all and shake it off if he gets hurt or if he gets wrapped up weird, because Clemson and the team needs to rally around a leader on the field, and who better than the quarterback to do so coming back from injury at a home game. So to me, while there's a lot of things wrong with this team, the quarterback can be a big influence on what everybody else does around it. So I'm looking for Cade Klubnik, if he's truly healthy, to go out there and give the team his all.
Yeah, and I think from the Duke perspective, teased it a moment ago, just how long it's been since Duke has actually won a game in Clemson, South Carolina against the Tigers. They have not won since 1980, 45 long years since Duke was able to go down there to Death Valley and knock off Clemson. I mentioned going all the way to another continent. Remember, in this series, in 1991, they went and played a game in Tokyo, Japan. It's been that long since Duke has been able to win on the road at Clemson. We look at this all-time series, 37 wins for Clemson, just 17 for Duke. There was a game in 1976 that ended in a tie, so we'll throw the one tie in there as well. But it very much so has been a series dominated by Clemson, although Duke did recently have a really fun and exciting Labor Day win against Clemson to open up the year when Riley Leonard was playing quarterback for the Blue Devils back in Cade Klubnick's early career. They're playing for the Clemson Tigers, but that's just a major storyline here. It has been forever since Duke has been able to win on the road in South Carolina against these Tigers. I'm really curious if they're going to be able to get the job done. I like Duke's chances. I like the way the offense has been playing as of late, but history tells us this is something that's been really difficult for the Duke football program to accomplish, Morgan.
And I will say a lot of fans are questioning whether or not how many fans will actually be there at this game because of the frustrations that they've had to deal with this season. It's not been fun to have multiple home games where halfway through you're booing what the team is doing, whether they're not able to get off the field on defense or whether they're not able to stay on the field on offense. Although the matchup predictor still has Clemson favored 59% to Clemson. So there's still some faith there from the ESPN predictor. Also, ESPN Bet Sportsbook and other sportsbooks out there have Clemson at a minus 3.5. So when you look at those, betting areas out there, Vegas still has Clemson as a favorite. But my concern is that 3.5, if you're giving it because it's home field advantage, well, there's a lot of fans that don't know if they're going to go to this game just because of how frustrated they've been. They're ready to take a stand and say, hey, you know what? I'm not going to waste my time and money, although the money's already been spent, but they're going to show something physically that they're done with what Clemson has done, because there's some bitterness right now in the fan base that this was supposed to be the team. A couple of weeks ago, I went in and I said, as Dabo mentioned, he wants to be able to fix his own fall. Well, how many coaches have ever actually fixed their own fall without getting fired and going to somewhere else. You know, Mac Brown had to go somewhere else. You know, Lane Kiffin's had to jump around. Although Urban Meyer really didn't fall, he did have to go other places. The one guy that I can say, Nick Saban did not actually have a fall like this. Nobody's ever remembered that or seen that from Nick Saban, although he did get out before some say he could have had one. But I look back at Joe Paterno. Joe Paterno back in 2004 had a bad season, like 4-7, and then he turned it around in 2005 and 11-1. But he was breaking in a new offensive coordinator. He went into the recruiting world and got 2 really fast wide receivers, and his defense gelled and were very mature. Well, this was supposed to be Clemson's 11-1 team. This was never supposed to be a 4-7 team kind of getting used to new pieces. This was supposed to be Clemson's 11-1 team. So that's what's been the biggest shock for the fan base, is that they had everything on paper that you thought was going to get them a bunch of wins, and it has exploded and imploded in a just massively negative way. Hopefully, we don't have to walk away from another game this weekend, and a early game, because not only did they have to stew for 2 bye weeks on a loss, but a lot of these games have been early games. So then it ruins your dinner time.
Yep.
So it's another one of those games that really the Clemson fan base is not excited to be a part of, because there's a lot at risk and a lot that could happen where Duke actually could put one up for the record books for a W on their side.
Well, let me ask you this before we get out of here, Morgan, because the one thing we haven't really touched on, and it always is a big storyline when we look at games like this. If you want to win, you got to come up with big plays in all 3 phases of the game: offense, defense, and special teams. That's an area we haven't talked about so far today in this one. Duke, their last time out, remember, they played Georgia Tech, and then Duke is also coming off a bye week going into this. And there were several special teams blunders that Duke had, from missed field goals on the year from Todd Polino. The holder, Kate Reynoldson, dropped a snap. Duke wasn't able to get a field goal off and score some points there against Georgia Tech. They've given up way too many yards at times this season on kickoff returns, have muffed some punts. They have housed a couple of punt returns, though, in a positive there. What's kind of the special teams dynamic that you see out of Clemson in here? Because who knows, maybe that could be the dynamic that kind of decides something like this.
We have faith in the kicker, Nolan Hoosier, if they can get close enough to actually use him.
Got to get in field goal range.
Got to get in field goal range. That's one big problem. But the punter. So on the ACC squad show, I was asked, what is one of the biggest question marks for Clemson in 2025? I said the punter. But what ended up happening is that Jack Smith has actually been the most consistent. And so that's been the biggest thing, I think, and it would be great if Clemson could figure out a way to find some sort of spark in special teams. I know they're not Frank Beamer or Shane Beamer, but they need to find some sort of spark from the special teams if they can. But to me, what we know has worked is the spark from turnovers. And I know Duke has also had some good luck with that as well. Oh, yeah. So I feel as if if both teams' defenses are trying to get turnovers, it could be the one who is more successful at that.
Yeah, it could. At the end of the day, it's take care of the football and take it away from your opposition. We'll see how that goes. I feel good about Duke. 45 years has been a really long time for this to happen. I think coming off the bye week, Duke finds themselves in a position to do that. What do you want to say to the Locked On Blue Devils fans and Locked On Clemson guys yourself, Morgan, as to how this game plays out?
I think I would probably take the points if you're going to do something with Vegas. That would be me. I don't really have a lot of faith in Clemson at home right now. They're not to the point where they put them on my dead to me list. When I'm on the radio, I have a dead to me list. James Franklin is one of those dead to me. Lincoln Riley, dead to me. Even some other coaches out there dead to me. But Clemson is not dead to me yet, but Clemson fans would tell me that they should be. So I can easily see Duke winning this game. I could easily see Duke not needing the 3.5 points, So I would take it if I were them. But it's hopefully the Clemson Tiger team can put together a fight coming off of a bye week. They seem to be a little bit better off of last bye week, but then again, they played a team with Bill Belichick who is having even more problems. So there's really no way to know if they actually improved at all.
Yeah. Duke gets the UNC game a little bit later in the season. So we'll see this Clemson one first and then see how the rest of the year plays out. So this has been fun, man. I've enjoyed it.
Yeah, glad to get together and talk some Clemson Duke. Hopefully we can do it again for the basketball season. For those of you who have tuned in and stuck with us to the very end, thank you so much for making this episode of Locked On College Crossover your first listen of the day. For your second listen, you can always check out the past episodes of our show, the Blue Devils or Clemson Tigers, or you can also check out Locked On ACC with Kenton Gibbs and Alex Dono. They break down the most interesting college conference and college sports, from the rivalries to the championships to every game in between. Find Locked On ACC on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you're a Tiger fan, I will say, as I always say, I'll see you after the game, and I'll see you at the top of the hill. JJ?
Go Duke, man. Thanks for having me on, Morgan.
All right, thanks. We'll talk to you later.